Hey everybody, today we're going to be discussing an ethical dilemma of Thompson's Violinist. Thompson's Violinist was written and created by Judith Thompson in 1971 as a defense point for pro-choice. The YouTube link provided on this slide does a really good job of going into detail of explaining this dilemma, but I will sum it up. Imagine waking up in the hospital and finding yourself laying next to one of the world's most renowned musicians. As you lay there, you begin to notice the musician is in poor health, and you have been hooked up to them by several tubes and machines that all appear to be keeping the musician alive. You are given two choices. You can remain connected to the musician while they heal for the next 9 months, or you can disconnect yourself and go home. Either choice you make, you will receive little to no harm. But if you disconnect, the musician will perish. Are there any obligations keeping you connected to the musician? There's a few different ways we can go about making a decision ethically, according to the Marcula frameworks, but the two that we will be discussing today are the virtues approach and the utilitarian approach. These two approaches go about decision making in two different ways. The virtues approach is based on ideal virtues of humanity, while the utilitarian approach tries to produce the greatest balance of good over harm. The virtues approach is an ancient approach that states ethical actions ought to be consistent with certain ideal virtues. Some of these virtues include honesty, courage, compassion, generosity, and love. There are also two questions that this approach asks of the people involved. What kind of person will I become if I do this? And is this action consistent with my acting at my best? The virtues approach also forces a look on the individual to look at themselves in a more characteristic way, to see what virtues they are made up of, as these virtues are dispositions and habits that enable us to act according to the highest potential of our character. The utilitarian approach acts in accordance of producing the greatest amount of good and the least amount of harm. It also allows people to take their consequences of their potential actions into account before they make a decision. It also emphasizes that the ethical action is the one that provides the most good or does the least harm, or that it produces the greatest balance of good over harm. So the difference between these two is the virtues approach is a more individual viewpoint of the virtues that they think that they are made up of, and the utilitarian approach forces them to look at a view of the bigger picture and try to include future consequences and actions into their decision making. But they both require a trained sensitivity to ethical issues and a practiced method for exploring ethical aspects. In conclusion, the best way to make an ethical decision is to try to apply several different ethical principles to the dilemma at hand, and to always retain an open mind. It's always best to look at things from all points of view, whether you agree with them or not. And doing all this will help provide for the full development of our humanity and help provide a more ethical decision-making process.